The July 21st double feature of Barbie and Oppenheimer, dubbed Barbenheimer, became a joke due to how odd of a juxtaposition those two movies made. One is a meta-satire on gender dynamics and corporate greed, while the other is a 3-hour drama from the point of view of a mid-20th century physicist who led the development of the atomic bomb. In Barbie, Ken covers Matchbox 20's Push. In Oppenheimer, our titular protagonist has a horrifying anxiety attack where he imagines his cheering audience eviscerating from a nuclear explosion. So yeah, they're basically the same movie. I jest, but only a little. My contention is that what started as an internet joke became an astute thematic pairing. For all their differences in form and genre, Barbie and Oppenheimer have a lot of thematic similarities. Both movies comment on the ways in which progressive ideas can be poisoned for militaristic and capitalistic motives. One may be horrifying while the other is hilarious, but they both have much to say about the power and poison of knowledge. Knowledge is power. This is a maxim older than both the atomic bomb and Mattel dolls. The knowledge we gain as a human race has real effects on the world. Ideas can create technology and build cultures. Theories are never just theories. They have the power to enact real change in people's lives. You cannot bite the fruit of knowledge without considering its possible consequences. This is the crux of Oppenheimer's arc in the film. At the beginning of Christopher Nolan's story, there is a scene where a young Oppenheimer poisons his professor's apple for the transgression of preventing Oppenheimer from attending a lecture by Niels Bohr. This act isn't corroborated by history, so why would Nolan include it? Because Nolan wants the audience to know right from the onset that Oppenheimer has no regard for the consequences of his pursuit of knowledge. All throughout the film, Oppenheimer is unwilling to commit to any of his ideas or relationships. He agrees with the communist movement in America, but evades any associations with them if it affects his work. He flirts with and beds many women, but leaves them whenever they become an inconvenience. So it's no surprise that Oppenheimer is able to compartmentalize his moral responsibility to the building of the bomb. It was just a job, he argues. Someone was going to do it, so why not him? He fights to remain neutral in his connection to Hiroshima until he can't. It's not until that final scene with Einstein that he actually admits his culpability in the atomic chain reaction they started. And all of this ties back to the apple, a deliberate symbol on Nolan's part, because knowledge is never neutral. Speaking of Edenic apples, Greta Gerwig's Barbie begins in Barbie Land, a matriarchal utopia where women run the show. The Barbies of Barbie Land are either doctors, lawyers, astronauts, or lawmakers. And every night is girls' night, and they don't have to worry about being harassed or oogled by men. Her showers are always warm, and her milk is never sour. It's a child's view of adulthood. Like Adam and Eve, everything is perfect until the knowledge of good and evil comes into the picture. Barbie's inciting incident begins when everything around her starts to spoil. Suddenly her showers are cold, her milk is expired, and she can't float effortlessly down into her car. Kate McKinnon's Weird Barbie informs regular Barbie that the problems of her owner in the real world are infecting Barbie Land. For the first time, regular Barbie must face the challenges that come with adulthood, like cellulite and objectification, and thoughts of dying. There is a scene where Barbie, much like Eve realizing she's naked, becomes aware of people looking at her body. She is now east of Barbie Land. She was once naive to these harsh realities, and now she must learn to wrestle with them. Her arc becomes learning how to deal with the impossible demands of consciousness in an imperfect and unjust world. While Oppenheimer focused on the moral implications of knowledge, Barbie addresses the personal and existential problems of knowledge. Both stories tip their caps to foundational creation stories. Oppenheimer is Prometheus, Barbie is Eve. Prometheus brought fire to humanity, allowing mankind to build civilizations and tear them down. Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and from that came the consciousness of her own nakedness and the awareness that she would one day die. Both stories warn of the consequences of knowledge, and both movies are wise to pay homage to them. These similarities don't stop here. So far, I focused on how knowledge affects these characters personally, but there is another side effect to knowledge, and it has to do with those that wish to wield knowledge from the shadows. It's no secret that both these movies are progressive. Barbie aims to satirize patriarchy, while Oppenheimer criticizes the American military-industrial complex for flippantly disregarding civilian Japanese lives in favor of showing off their new atomic toy. I mean, the war was already moving towards Allied victory anyway. But more than that, both films comment on how progressive ideas can be taken advantage of. Upon entering the real world, Barbie is shocked to find a group of young teens who don't like what she stands for. But how could they not? I mean, doesn't Barbie tell young girls that they can be anything they want? Doctors, lawyers, astronauts, etc. But to these young girls, Barbie represents impossible expectations. They can't just be normal, they have to be exceptional like Barbie. Here we see the progressive ideas about women entering the workforce, and looking perfect while doing so, actually hinder women. There is a literal and metaphorical plasticity to Barbie and all her accessories. She paints an ideal picture of what women can achieve and pursue without including the harsh realities that come with that pursuit. Meanwhile, Mattel gets to reap all the dough while claiming to have a positive message. Likewise, Oppenheimer's pursuit of scientific progress isn't wrong in and of itself. I mean, after all, who doesn't like cars and smartphones and IMAX cameras? But scientific breakthroughs don't happen within a bubble. You can't create a weapon or the ingredients for one and expect no one to use said weapon. Oppenheimer is constantly trying to have his intellectual cake and eat it too. He loves pushing the limits of what we know as a species, but loathes considering the moral stickiness of said knowledge. In one of the film's more harrowing scenes, Oppenheimer visits President Truman, played by Gary Oldman, in the Oval Office. He confesses to Truman that he feels like he has blood on his hands, and Oppenheimer insists that they dismantle the projects at Los Alamos and pull away from developing further bombs. Truman's response is to throw a towel at him and remind him that he, President Truman, made the call to drop the bomb, and he'd do it again. Oppenheimer believed that seeing the force of the atomic bomb would scare governments away from wanting to use them, but it had the opposite effect. What started as forward-thinking, well-intentioned ideas, understanding nuclear physics and women's empowerment, became weapons in the hands of corporations. Both films uncover shadowy figures who have only profits and victory in mind. The Mattel president, portrayed by Will Ferrell, will endorse any message if it increases sales. The generals and leaders of the US military certainly put a lot of thought into using the atomic bomb. However, those thoughts mainly consisted of which of their favorite vacation destinations should be spared from the blast radius. Both films insist that we not remain neutral to the implementation of knowledge. We might be indifferent, but the people in power certainly won't. The pain of progress is that new, empowering ideas can be regressive in the wrong hands. Barbenheimer, while offering lots of fun and cinematic delights, reminds us that we are responsible for the ideas we put into the world. Scientists can't assume their work stops in a lab. They have to constantly advocate for how to best implement their discoveries. Likewise, one generation's hopeful message of women empowerment might actually become an unbearable weight to a later generation. We can't sit back and expect ideas to implement themselves, whether that be ideas about gender, identity, or atomic particles. The more we learn about the world and ourselves, the more work we have to put into implementing that knowledge. Otherwise, it will fall into the hands of those who only have profits in mind. And this not only affects us, it affects those who come after. To quote the narrator in Barbie, humans only have one ending. Ideas live forever.